The cargo ship Meridian drifted through the dark space between stars. Captain stood at the bridge window and watched the distant lights of a dying sun. She had been running supply routes for 15 years. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. The distress signal came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Pulled herself from her bunk and stumbled to the communication deck. The signal was weak and broken. Someone was calling for help from a planet that should have been empty. "What do we have?" she asked her first officer, a tired man named. "Unknown origin. The planet is 442b. According to records, it was abandoned after the mining operations failed 20 years ago." Rubbed her eyes and looked at the star map. The planet was only 6 hours away. They could investigate and still make their delivery deadline. "Change course," she said. "Let's see who's screaming out there." The Meridian dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the planet's atmosphere. Below them stretched endless forests of purple trees and silver lakes. Had never seen anything like it. The planet was supposed to be dead rock and dust. "Life signs?" she asked. Checked his instruments 3 times before answering. Thousands, maybe millions, small creatures scattered across the northern continent. Felt something twist in her stomach. The mining companies had reported no life on this world. Either they had lied or something had changed dramatically. They landed in a clearing near the source of the distress signal, grabbed her sidearm and stepped out first. The air smelled sweet, like flowers after rain. Purple grass bent under her boots. The distress beacon sat in the middle of the clearing. It was old Earth technology, covered in rust and vines. Someone had activated it recently, but whoever it was had disappeared. Captain called from behind her, "Look at the trees." Turned and saw them. Hundreds of small creatures sat in the branches, watching with large golden eyes. They looked like earth cats but smaller, with longer ears and fur that shifted colors in the light. Each one was no bigger than her hand. "Hello," said softly. The creatures tilted their heads in perfect unison. It was strange and beautiful. One of them jumped down from the lowest branch and walked toward her. Its fur changed from purple to blue as it moved through patches of sunlight, crouched slowly and held out her hand. The creature sniffed her fingers, then pressed its small head against her palm. A sound came from its throat, like a purr mixed with a song. "They seem friendly," said nervously. More of them came down from the trees. Within minutes, was surrounded by dozens of the small beings. They rubbed against her legs and climbed onto her shoulders. Their fur was warm and soft. "Someone activated that beacon," said. "Maybe to call for help, maybe to warn us away." She looked at the creatures around her. They seemed harmless, adorable even, but something about the way they moved together bothered her. It was too coordinated, too intelligent. "Let's explore," she said. The creatures followed as walked through the forest. They stayed close to her, forming a loose group that moved when she moved and stopped when she stopped. Kept his distance, clearly uncomfortable. They found the first body after an hour of walking. It was a soldier. They were a warrior species from the outer systems. They stood 8 feet tall and had skin like gray stone. This one was dead, its chest torn open by something with claws. "What killed it?" whispered. Studied the wounds. They were small but deep, hundreds of them covering the body from head to foot. She looked at the creatures sitting around her. They stared back with innocent golden eyes. One of them yawned, showing tiny teeth that could slice through metal. "I think I understand now," said. The forest held more bodies. Dozens of dead soldiers lay scattered among the purple trees. All of them had died the same way, death by 1,000 small cuts. Pieced together the story from the evidence. They had come to harvest the creatures. Their fur was valuable, worth more than gold on the black market. The fur that changed colors was prized by the wealthy and powerful across the galaxy. But they had made a mistake. They had underestimated their prey. "These things fight back," said, his voice shaking. They protect themselves, corrected. There's a difference. She knelt down and let one of the creatures climb into her hands. It looked at her with those golden eyes, and she felt something pass between them. Understanding, trust. "You're not pets," she whispered. "You're survivors." The creature purred its singing purr. They returned to the ship as the sun began to set, uploaded her findings to the company database. She recommended the planet be classified as protected. No mining, no hunting, no contact. "They won't listen," said. "That fur is worth too much." Knew he was right. Greed always won against common sense. Someone would come for these creatures eventually. Someone who didn't care about the bodies rotting in the forest. She made a decision that would change everything. "We're staying," she said. Stared at her. "What?" "I'm putting in for early retirement. Using my savings to buy land rights on this planet. Someone needs to protect these things until the galaxy learns to leave them alone." Opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He had known for 10 years. When she made a decision, nothing could change her mind. "You're crazy," he said finally. "Probably," she agreed. The creatures had gathered outside the ship. They sat in neat rows watching the entrance, waiting. Walked down the ramp and stood before them. "I'm going to stay with you," she said. "I'm going to keep you safe." The creatures rose as one. They moved toward her in perfect formation, like soldiers answering a general's call. They surrounded her, pressed against her legs, climbed her shoulders. Their purring filled the air like a song. Smiled. For the first time in 15 years, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 3 months passed. Built a small house near the clearing where she had first landed. The creatures, which she named after the way their fur glowed at night, visited her every day. They brought her gifts, strange fruits from the deep forest, shiny stones from the riverbeds. Once they brought her a flower that sang when the wind blew through its petals. She learned their ways slowly. They communicated through color changes in their fur. Blue meant curiosity, purple meant happiness, red meant danger. They were smarter than any animal she had encountered, smarter than some humans she knew. They had a society, she realized, leaders and followers, teachers and students. They cared for their sick and buried their dead. They were people in every way that mattered. Started keeping records. She documented their behavior, their language, their culture. She wanted the galaxy to see them as she saw them, not as resources to be harvested, but as beings worthy of respect. The first attack came on a quiet morning. Was gathering water from the stream when she heard the ships, 3 of them cutting through the clouds like black knives. They weren't. The markings on their hulls belonged to the Syndicate, the most dangerous criminal organization in the galaxy. She ran back to her house and grabbed her rifle. They were already gathering. Hundreds of them poured from the forest, their fur shifting to deep red. "Stay close to me," said. They formed a circle around her. They sat in perfect rows, their golden eyes fixed on the sky. They were not running, they were preparing. The Syndicate ships landed in the clearing. Armed men spilled out, their weapons raised. Counted 30 of them, professional hunters with professional equipment. A woman stepped forward from the group. She was tall and thin, with a scar that ran from her forehead to her chin. Recognized her from the bounty lists. The most wanted smuggler in 3 systems. Said, "I've heard about you, the crazy human who lives with the kittens." "Leave this place," said, her rifle aimed its chest. Laughed, "1 woman against 30 guns. I admire the courage, but this isn't a negotiation. Those creatures are worth a fortune. We're taking them." Looked at the around her. They hadn't moved. They sat in perfect stillness, waiting. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," said. "Small, fuzzy animals. I think I understand perfectly." Raised her hand to give the order to fire. Dropped to the ground and shouted, "Now." They exploded into motion. They moved faster than anything had ever seen. In seconds, they were among the hunters, climbing their bodies, tearing with their small, sharp claws. The hunters screamed. They fired their weapons wildly, hitting nothing but air. They were everywhere and nowhere, a storm of color and fury. Grabbed as she tried to run, she knocked the smuggler to the ground and pressed her rifle against her throat. "Call them off," said. "They'll kill us all," screamed. Looked at the chaos around her. They had disabled most of the hunters. The men lay on the ground, bleeding from countless small wounds. None of them were dead. They had been careful. "They're showing mercy," said, "more than you deserve." She whistled, a signal she had taught the weeks ago. The creatures stopped instantly. They from the hunters and returned to, forming their neat rows once more. Stared in disbelief. "You control them." "No," said, "they choose to listen. There's a difference." She led up and pointed toward the ships. "Take your people and leave. Tell everyone you meet. This planet is protected. These creatures have a guardian, and she doesn't give second chances." Gathered her wounded hunters and retreated to the ships. Before she left, she looked back at standing among the. "You're not human anymore," said. "You're something else." Smiled. "I'm exactly what I need to be." The ships lifted off and disappeared into the clouds. Watched them go, then looked down at the gathered around her feet. "Good work," she said. They purred their singing purr. Their fur shifted to deep purple, the color of happiness. Word spread through the galaxy about the human who protected the strange creatures on 442b. Some called her crazy. Others called her dangerous. The syndicate put a bounty on her head. The mining companies sent lawyers to challenge her land rights. But none of it mattered, had found her purpose, and they had found their champion. More attacks would come. Knew this. The fur was too valuable, the creatures too defenseless looking. Greed would drive more hunters to try their luck. But was ready, and they were learning. Every day they grew more organized, more coordinated, more deadly. They were building something together, an army that could protect itself, an alliance between human and alien that had never existed before. Stood on the hill above her house and watched the sun set over the purple forests. They gathered around her, thousands of them, their fur glowing in the fading light. "Stay close," she whispered. They pressed against her legs, warm and soft and dangerous. She had never felt more alive. 2 years had passed since claimed 442b as her home. The small house by the clearing had grown into a compound. She had built walls from local stone and watchtowers from fallen trees. Solar panels collected energy from the alien sun. Communication arrays connected her to the wider galaxy. The population had grown too. Where there had been thousands, now there were millions. They spread across the continent, building their own communities in the purple forests, but they always came back to. She was their center, their anchor, their guardian. Woke each morning before dawn. She exercised. She maintained her weapons. She studied reports from her network of informants across the galaxy. The syndicate had not forgotten their humiliation. Neither had the mining corporations or the fur traders or the dozen other groups who wanted what this planet had to offer. But attacking was expensive. The first assault had cost the syndicate 30 hunters and 3 ships. The second attempt, 6 months later, had cost a rival organization even more. Word had spread that the creatures on 442b were not easy prey. Still knew the peace could not last forever. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Was teaching a group of young how to recognize different ship types when her communication array beeped with an urgent alert. She read the message 3 times before she understood its meaning. The Galactic Council had received a formal request from the Empire. They wanted access to 442b for something they called a harvesting operation. The Council was sending a delegation to assess the situation. They would arrive in 2 weeks. Sat down heavily on a rock, they sensed her distress. They gathered close, their fur shifting to anxious blue. The Galactic Council was the highest authority in known space. Their decisions were final. If they ruled that they had the right to harvest no one could stop them. Had 2 weeks to prepare an argument that might save her friends. She spent the first 3 days gathering evidence. She documented this intelligence, their social structures, their language. She recorded videos of them caring for their young, building their homes, mourning their dead. She compiled everything into a presentation that proved beyond doubt that there were sentient beings deserving of protection under galactic law. On the 4th day, a ship landed in her clearing. Grabbed her rifle and ran outside. The ship was small, a personal transport of expensive design. Its door opened and a human man stepped out. He was older than, with gray hair and a face lined by decades of hard living. He wore the uniform of the Galactic Council, but his posture told he was no diplomat. This man had been a soldier once. "Captain," he said, "I'm Ambassador William Cross. The Council sent me ahead to conduct a preliminary assessment." Kept her rifle ready. Preliminary assessment of what? Of you, of this planet, of the creatures you've been protecting. Cross looked around at the watching from the trees. "May I come inside?" Hesitated, then lowered her weapon. "Fine, but they come with me." She whistled, and a dozen jumped down from the branches. They surrounded her as she led Cross into her compound. Inside the main building, offered the ambassador water and a seat. He accepted both, his eyes constantly moving to the that had followed them in. "They're remarkable," Cross said. "The reports didn't do them justice." "The reports call them animals," said, "valuable resources to be harvested and sold." "Some reports do, others tell a different story." Cross pulled a data pad from his pocket and set it on the table. "I've been reading about you, Captain. 15 years of cargo runs, clean record, good reputation. Then you find these creatures and throw everything away to become their guardian." "I didn't throw anything away. I found something worth protecting." Cross nodded slowly. "They want them dead or captured. The syndicate wants their fur. The mining corporations want the rare minerals under this soil. You've made powerful enemies." "I know." The council delegation arrives in 12 days. 3 judges will hear arguments from both sides. They will send their best lawyers. They'll argue that they are animals, no more deserving of protection than livestock. They'll point to the dead soldiers in the forest as proof that the creatures are dangerous and need to be controlled. Felt cold anger building in her chest. Those soldiers came to kill and capture. They defended themselves. "I believe you, but belief isn't evidence. You need to prove they are sentient. Prove they have culture, language, and self-awareness. Prove they deserve the same rights as any other intelligent species in the galaxy." He tapped the data pad. "I'm here to help you build that case." Stared at him. "Why? What's your interest in this?" Cross was quiet for a long moment. His eyes went distant, looking at something couldn't see. 40 years ago, I was stationed on a planet called 7, beautiful world, home to a species of intelligent reptiles who had just discovered fire. The council declared them primitive, not worthy of protection. A mining company moved in and... He stopped, his jaw tightening. "I watched them die, all of them. Millions of beings who might have built civilizations one day. Gone because the council decided they weren't intelligent enough to matter." He looked at with fierce intensity. "I won't let that happen again, not on my watch." Felt something shift in her chest. For 2 years she had fought alone. Now, for the first time, she had an ally. "What do we need to do?" she asked. They worked through the night and into the next day. Cross had experience navigating council politics. He knew what arguments would work and what would fail. Together, they built a case piece by piece. They helped too. They seemed to understand what was happening. They performed for Cross's recording equipment, showing their intelligence in ways that could not be. One morning, Cross watched as a group constructed a bridge across a stream. They worked in coordinated teams, passing materials from one to another. When the bridge was complete, They tested it carefully before allowing their young to cross. That's tool use, Cross said, his voice filled with wonder. Complex planning, cooperation, teaching. They're smarter than we are in some ways, said. They've never started a war, never destroyed their environment, never hurt anyone who didn't threaten them first. The Council won't care about that. They'll focus on measurable intelligence, language, mathematics, abstract reasoning. Whistled softly. A elder approached, its fur silver with age. She had named this one Whisper because of the soft sounds it made when it communicated. Whisper said, "Show him the counting." The old walked to a flat rock and began scratching marks with its claws. 1 mark, then 2, then 3, then 5, 8, 13, 21. Cross leaned forward. The sequence, how is that possible? They've been watching me, said. Learning from my books, my computers. They don't just mimic, they understand. She pointed to another group in the corner. They were sitting in a circle, communicating through their color-changing fur, had spent months learning to read their language. Blue patterns rippled between them like conversation. They're debating something, she said. Politics, probably. The different family groups don't always agree on everything. Cross shook his head slowly. This changes everything. They argue these creatures are mindless beasts, but this is civilization. The days passed quickly, and Cross refined their arguments, gathered more evidence, practiced their presentation. They seemed to sense the importance of what was happening. They stayed close to the compound, ready to demonstrate their intelligence at a moment's notice. On the 8th day, everything changed. Was reviewing their presentation when her proximity alarm screamed. She ran to the watchtower and saw ships filling the sky. Not 3 or 5 or 10, dozens, an entire fleet descending on her planet. Cross joined her at the tower, his face pale. Those are warships. They're not supposed to be here. The Council hasn't made their ruling yet. They're not waiting for the Council. They're taking what they want. Watched the ships begin their landing sequence. She counted 40 heavy transports and a dozen gunships. Thousands of soldiers would be on the ground within an hour. We can't fight that, Cross said. We need to evacuate. Didn't move. She looked down at the gathered in the clearing below. Millions of them would die if she ran. Everything she had built would be destroyed. No, she said. Be reasonable. This is an invasion force. Your little army of creatures can't stop them. She turned to face him. You came here because you wanted to prevent another 7. Well, here it is. Same choice, same moment. Are you going to watch another species die? Cross opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Something hardened in his eyes, something old and dangerous. What's your plan? He asked. Climbed down from the tower. They parted to let her through, then closed around her like a living shield. Their fur had shifted to deep crimson. They knew what was coming. They want to fight, said. We're going to give them one they'll never forget. She spent the next hour preparing. They spread into the forest, taking positions she had taught them over 2 years of training. They moved in perfect silence, millions of small bodies vanishing into the purple shadows. Checked her weapons and her armor. Cross had retrieved a rifle from his ship. He stood beside her, ready. Whatever happens, said, make sure the Council sees the recording. Make sure the galaxy knows what they did here. Cross nodded. They'll know, I promise. The army advanced through the forest in a long column. They moved slowly, expecting ambush. Smart thought, but not smart enough. She stood alone in the middle of the main path. Behind her, seemingly empty forest. They stopped when they saw her. A massive commander pushed to the front of the column. He wore decorated armor and carried a weapon bigger than his entire body. His stone-gray face twisted into something like amusement. One human, he said, his voice like grinding rocks. The famous guardian, I expected more. You should have, replied. The commander laughed. His soldiers laughed with him. The sound echoed through the trees. "Surrender the creatures and we'll let you live," the commander said. "Fight us and we'll add your skull to our collection." Smiled, she raised her hand high above her head. "Stay close," she whispered, and dropped her hand. The forest came alive, poured from every direction, not hundreds, not thousands, millions of them flooding the column like a rainbow tide. Their claws flashed in the filtered sunlight. Their fur blazed crimson. The soldiers tried to fight. They fired their weapons, swung their massive fists, stomped their heavy feet. But they were everywhere, on their faces, under their armor, crawling inside their equipment. Watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. They weren't killing. They were disabling, cutting straps, blinding sensors, damaging joints. Thousands of the galaxy's deadliest soldiers brought down by creatures no bigger than a human hand. The commander charged toward, bellowing with rage. She dropped low and fired 3 shots into the gaps of his armor. He stumbled but kept coming. A wave of swept over him. They covered every inch of his body, their claws working in perfect coordination. Within seconds, his armor fell away in pieces. Within a minute, he collapsed to the ground, bleeding from 100 small wounds. Stood over him, her rifle pointed at his face. "Call off your ships," she said. "Order a retreat." The commander spat gray blood. "Never." Looked at the covering his body. She made a small gesture with her hand. The creatures shifted, exposing his throat. "I won't kill you," said, "but they will. They've seen what your kind does to them. They have no mercy left for soldiers." The commander stared into her eyes. Whatever he saw there convinced him. "Retreat," he croaked into his communicator. "All forces retreat." The ships lifted off throughout the afternoon. They left behind weapons, equipment, and wounded soldiers. Let them take their injured. She wasn't a monster. Cross filmed everything. The defeated army, the celebrating, standing among her friends, exhausted but unbowed. "The council will have to see this," he said. "They attacked without authorization. They violated a dozen galactic laws. This changes everything." Nodded tiredly. She sank to the ground and they immediately surrounded her. They pressed against her, purring their singing purrs, their fur shifting to happy purple. "It's not over," she said. "The council might still rule against us." "They won't," Cross said firmly. "Not after this. You just defeated an invasion force with creatures they called mindless animals. The whole galaxy will see what they can do when they work together, what humans and aliens can achieve when they trust each other." He sat down beside her, his old joints cracking. "You've started something here, something that could change how the galaxy sees intelligent life." Looked at the around her. Whisper sat at her feet, its silver fur glowing in the fading light. Young ones climbed over her legs, chattering in their color-changing language. Warriors who had just fought an army groomed each other peacefully. "They're not my army," she said softly. "They're my family." Cross smiled. "That's exactly what I'll tell the council." The sun set over the purple forests. Somewhere in the sky, ships fled toward the edges of the system. In 4 days, the council delegation would arrive to find a planet that had changed the rules of galactic politics. Closed her eyes and let herself rest. Whatever came next, she would face it. Her family would face it with her. Together they were unstoppable. The council delegation arrived on a gray morning when clouds covered the alien sun. 3 judges stepped from their gleaming ship, followed by security officers, translators, and a small army of bureaucrats. Behind them came another ship, darker and heavier, carrying the legal team and their guards. Waited in the clearing with Cross at her side. They had gathered by the thousands, sitting in their perfect rows, their fur a calm shade of purple. They looked peaceful, harmless, exactly how wanted them to look. The lead judge was a species known for their strict adherence to law and procedure. She had pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to look through everything they touched. Her name was Magistrate Eth, and she would decide the fate of an entire world. "Captain," the magistrate said, her voice cold and precise. "You have been accused of harboring dangerous creatures, attacking authorized harvesting operations, and causing the deaths of legitimate commercial workers. How do you respond?" Kept her voice steady. "The creatures on this planet are not animals. They are intelligent beings with language, culture, and society. The so-called harvesting operations were attacks on a sentient species. I defended them. I would do it again." The ambassador stepped forward. He was smaller than the soldiers had fought, but his eyes held the same predatory intelligence. "Words without proof. The human makes claims she cannot support." "I have proof," said. "Ambassador Cross has documented everything. They demonstrate intelligence equal to any recognized species in galactic records." The magistrate raised a hand for silence. "We will conduct our own assessment. You will have the opportunity to present evidence during the formal hearing tomorrow. Until then, all parties will remain in designated areas. Any violence will result in immediate judgment against the responsible party." Nodded, understood. The delegation set up their camp on the opposite side of the clearing. Drones flew overhead, scanning and recording. Scientists in protective suits ventured into the forest to collect samples. They watched everything with their golden eyes, staying close to his compound. That night, Cross and reviewed their strategy one final time. "The magistrate is fair," Cross said. "She follows the law exactly. If we can prove sentience according to council standards, she'll have to rule in our favor. And they'll argue economics, the value of the fur, the resources under the soil. They'll try to make this about profit and loss." Stared at the fire burning in her small hearth. "And if they win?" Cross didn't answer. He didn't need to. The hearing began at dawn. Tables had been set up in the clearing, with the judges seated in the center and the two parties on opposite sides. Recording equipment broadcast everything to relay stations across the galaxy. Millions of beings were watching. They presented their case first. Their lawyers were polished and professional. They showed charts documenting the economic value of fur. They displayed images of dead soldiers and called it proof of dangerous animal behavior. They argued that the creatures showed no signs of recognized intelligence and should be classified as fauna, subject to standard harvesting regulations. When they finished, the magistrate turned to, "You may present your evidence." Stood, they shifted slightly, thousands of them adjusting their positions to focus on her. Their fur began to change, flowing through patterns of color that had learned to read over years of study. "Magistrate," she said, "they have shown you numbers and images. I will show you truth." She whistled softly. A group of elders walked forward and sat in a line before the judges. Whisper was among them, its silver fur bright against the purple grass. "These elders lead their communities," explained. "They make decisions about territory, resources, and relationships with other groups. They teach their young and care for their sick. They remember their dead." The ambassador interrupted. "Training animals to perform tricks is not evidence of intelligence." "Then let me demonstrate actual intelligence," replied. She pulled out a data pad and displayed a complex mathematical problem on the screen. It was a puzzle that required abstract reasoning, something no trained animal could solve. Whisper studied the screen for a long moment. Then it walked to a patch of bare dirt and began scratching marks with its claws. The judges watched in silence as the old worked through the problem step by step. Within 5 minutes, the correct answer was written in the dirt. The magistrate leaned forward. "That is remarkable." "They learned mathematics from watching me," said. "But learning isn't enough. They apply this knowledge. They build structures. They create tools. They solve problems no human has shown them." She gestured toward the forest. "Last month, a disease threatened the young in the eastern community. The elders identified medicinal plants, prepared treatments, and saved hundreds of lives. They didn't learn that from me. They developed it themselves." Cross stepped forward with his recording equipment. He played videos of engaged in complex behaviors, building, teaching, debating. The judges watched in growing amazement. The ambassador's face remained stone. Behavior patterns can be mimicked without understanding. Show us true communication. Prove these creatures have language. Smiled, she had been waiting for this challenge. Whisper, she said, tell the judges about your family. The old turned to face the tribunal. Its fur began to flow through colors and patterns, creating shapes and symbols that rippled across its body. Others joined in, adding their own colors to the display. Together, they created a living tapestry of light and meaning. Translated as they communicated. Whisper says it was born 70 seasons ago in the hills near the Silver Lake. Its parents were gatherers who collected fruit from the tall trees. Whisper had 4 siblings. 2 died young, taken by a flying predator that no longer exists. The other 2 founded communities of their own in the southern forests. She paused as more colors flowed across the gathered. Whisper became an elder after leading its community through a hard winter. It has taught hundreds of young ones. It remembers every name, every face. It hopes to see it grow strong before it joins the great darkness. The clearing was silent. Even the ambassador had no response. The magistrate spoke slowly. This is unprecedented. We have documented communication, self-awareness, memory, cultural transmission. These are people, said firmly, different from us, smaller than us, but people nonetheless. They deserve the same rights as any other sentient species. The legal team huddled together, whispering urgently. Their ambassador stepped forward, his voice tight with barely contained anger. Even if we accept that these creatures possess some form of intelligence, they have killed citizens. They have attacked authorized operations. They must be held accountable. Felt the old anger rise in her chest. Your soldiers came to kill and capture innocent beings. They defended their families. If a human child was being attacked, would you blame them for fighting back? The situations are not comparable. They are exactly comparable, Cross interjected. Galactic law is clear. Sentient species have the right to self-defense. If they are recognized as sentient, everything your people have done here becomes an act of war against a protected civilization. The ambassador's face darkened. You would make the Empire into criminals. I would make the truth known, said. Your empire attacked peaceful beings for profit. You called them animals because it was convenient, because it allowed you to ignore their screams. She stepped forward, her voice rising. This galaxy has watched species die because the powerful decided they weren't valuable enough to protect. 7. The glass forests of, the singing whales of Cetus Prime, all gone because someone decided their lives were worth less than money. Pointed at the gathered around the clearing. Look at them. Really look. Tell me these aren't beings worthy of protection. Tell me their children deserve to be skinned for coats. Tell me their elders deserve to be hunted for sport. She turned to the magistrate. You have the power to break the cycle. Recognize the as sentient. Give them the protection they deserve. Show the galaxy that we can be better than we have been. The clearing fell silent. The magistrate stared at for a long moment, her pale blue eyes unreadable. We will deliberate, she said finally. The ruling will be announced tomorrow at dawn. That night couldn't sleep. She sat outside her compound, watching the stars wheel overhead. They had gathered around her, thousands of warm bodies pressing close. Whisper sat at her feet. Its fur glowed softly in the darkness, patterns of color flowing across its body. Are you telling me something? Asked. The colors shifted. After years of study could read basic messages. She saw gratitude. She saw hope. She saw something that might have been love. Whatever happens tomorrow, she whispered, I'm glad I found you. I'm glad I stayed. Whisper purred its singing purr. The sound was echoed by thousands of other, creating a choir that filled the night air. Dawn came slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, stood in the clearing with Cross facing the tribunal. The delegation stood opposite, their faces hard with anticipation. The magistrate emerged from her quarters and took her seat. The other judges flanked her, their expressions carefully neutral. "We have reached our decision," the magistrate announced. Her voice carried across the silent clearing. "In the matter of 442b and its native inhabitants, the Galactic Council rules as follows." She paused, felt her heart pounding. "The beings known as are hereby recognized as a sentient species under Section 7 of the Galactic Rights Charter. They are entitled to full protection under galactic law. There is classified as a protected territory. No harvesting, mining, or development operations may proceed without the explicit consent of the people and their designated representative." Felt her knees weaken. She grabbed Cross's arm to steady herself. The magistrate continued. "Furthermore, the Council acknowledges the actions of the Empire as unauthorized aggression against a protected species. Reparations will be discussed in separate proceedings. The soldiers involved in the recent invasion will face criminal charges." The ambassador exploded in fury. "This is outrageous. You cannot be serious." "We are entirely serious," the magistrate said coldly. "The evidence presented was conclusive. They are intelligent beings. Treating them otherwise would be a violation of everything the Council stands for." She turned to, "Captain, you have been named the official liaison between thee and the Galactic Council. Do you accept this responsibility?" Looked at the gathered around her. Whisper sat at her feet, its fur glowing bright purple. Thousands of golden eyes watched her, waiting. "I accept," she said. The magistrate nodded. "Then it is done. This hearing is concluded." The delegation stormed back to their ship, watched them go, feeling something she hadn't allowed herself to feel for 2 years. Hope. Cross clapped her on the shoulder. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," corrected. "I couldn't have one without your help." "The one," Cross said. "You just gave them a voice." Knelt down and held out her hands. Young climbed into her arms, chittering with excitement. Their fur changed through every color of the rainbow. "What happens now?" Cross asked. Stood, cradling the small creatures against her chest. "Now we build. They need schools, hospitals, representatives who can speak for them in galactic forums. They need to learn about the galaxy beyond their world." She smiled. "And the galaxy needs to learn about them." In the years that followed, 442b became something unprecedented. A world where 2 species lived side by side as equals. Ambassadors traveled to distant planets, their color-changing fur broadcasting messages of peace and cooperation. Human scientists came to study their unique biology and culture. Artists came to witness their beautiful color songs. Remained at the center of it all. She watched the young grow into elders. She attended countless meetings and negotiations. She defended her friends against new threats that arose as the galaxy changed around them. But her favorite moments were the quiet ones, sitting on the hill above her compound as the sun set over the purple forests. The gathered around her, thousands of warm bodies pressing close, their purring filling the air like music. On one such evening, Cross visited. He was older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes still held that fierce determination. "The Council wants to give you a medal," he said. "The highest honor they can bestow, for outstanding contribution to galactic peace and understanding." Laughed. "I don't need a medal." "I know, but it's not really about you, is it? It's about showing the galaxy what's possible. One human, one act of courage. Look at what it's become." Looked at the around her. Whisper had passed 2 seasons ago, its body returned to the earth near the Silver Lake. But its children and thrived. The community it had built spread across the continent. "When I found them," said softly, "I just wanted to keep them safe. I never imagined this." "That's what makes it real," Cross replied. You didn't set out to change the galaxy. You just did what was right, and the galaxy changed because of it." He sat down beside her, groaning as his joints protested. "You know, there are other planets out there, other species on the edge of extinction, other battles that need to be fought." Raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting something?" "I'm suggesting that what you started here doesn't have to end here. They can protect themselves now. They have ships, technology, allies. They don't need a guardian anymore." He smiled, "But maybe other species do." Thought about it for a long moment. She had spent years building this sanctuary. The idea of leaving felt like cutting away part of herself. But she also thought about the ambassador's words on that first day, about the dead soldiers in the forest and the greed that had driven them there, about all the species that had died because no one stood up to protect them. "I'll think about it," she said finally. The stirred around her. Colors rippled through their fur, patterns she had learned to read as easily as text. They were telling her something, encouraging her. One of Whispers climbed into her lap. It was small and soft, with golden eyes that held ancient wisdom. Its fur shifted through colors that spelled out a message. "Go, we will be here, we will remember." Felt tears prick her eyes. She had come to this planet as a cargo ship captain running from nothing in particular. She had found a family, a purpose, a reason to keep fighting. And now that family was telling her to spread what they had built to the stars. She looked across. "When do we leave?" The old ambassador grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." The next morning, stood before the gathered for the last time as their guardian. Millions of them filled the clearing and the surrounding forest, their fur creating a sea of color that stretched to the horizon. "I have to go," she said. Her voice was strong, but her heart ached. "There are others out there who need help, others who deserve the chance you've been given." They didn't respond with sadness. Their fur blazed with pride, with gratitude, with love. The new liaison, a young woman named who had come to study the years ago, stepped forward. "I'll take care of them," she said. "I promise." Nodded. "I know you will." She turned to face the one final time. "Stay close to each other," she said. "Protect your families, remember who you are, and never let anyone tell you that you're less than you know you are." She raised her hand in the gesture that had become their signal. Millions of rose as one. They formed their perfect rose, their army formation, the stance they had taken beside her in battle after battle. Their fur shifted to deep purple, the color of happiness and belonging. Smiled through her tears. "Goodbye," she whispered. She walked across his ship and climbed aboard. As they lifted into the sky, she watched her home shrink below her. The purple forests, the silver lakes, the clearing where she had first met the creatures who had changed her life. And they still standing in formation, their colors visible even from orbit. "Where to first?" Cross asked. Thought about the galaxy spread before them, the billions of worlds, the countless species struggling to survive, the fights that needed fighting. "Wherever we're needed most," she said. The ship jumped to faster than light. The stars blurred around them. And the guardian of 442b began a new chapter in the story she had started years ago. A story that proved the smallest creatures could defeat the mightiest armies. A story that showed kindness was the most powerful weapon in the universe. A story that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. All because one human woman looked at a group of frightened beings and said the words that changed everything. "Stay close." They had, and together, they had changed the stars.